Okay, good morning. My name's David Steinberg, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Reese Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available after through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet, so if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This hearing is being held to consider one item. That is order number 211407 to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of two trees adjacent to 259 7th Street. The fine issued is $20,000. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts of the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. I'll ask Public Works staff to speak first to present the case. There's no time limit for this presentation. Then I'll allow the property owner or appellant to speak, then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to talk. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You'll then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you're dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it's your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. We'll then have the standard 3 minutes to proceed with your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We'll now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open the hearing to public comments. Members of the public who make comments on this matter or may make comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction but are not on today's agenda. Are there any comments at this time? Madam Clerk, has anyone indicated they want to speak?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, so there are no comments, so I'll close this item. The item is now closed. So the first or the next item on today's agenda, as I said, is hearing order number 211407. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Good morning. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, San Francisco Bureau of Urban Forestry. I oversee our urban forestry inspection team, and Public Works Bureau of Urban Forestry maintains the street trees in the public right-of-way. And I'll go ahead and share a screen. We have general background information about our urban forestry ordinance that we'll present first. And we only have one case this morning, so there might be some information that if it doesn't really apply to today's case, I may just sort of move past that a little more quickly than typical. But again, we just have one item, and so we do always typically cover the general background about our jurisdiction and maintenance of street trees, what the rules are, so to speak, and then get into the details of the particular case. And I've got a number of photos. We try to do a very thorough job, and certainly will show a full view, history of the site, and just to let the applicant, or excuse me, the property owner know, you know, I pulled up photos from Google Street View and, you know, just kind of show the history of the site, which I think does help explain the situation, and I think they'll find that helpful. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and this usually just takes me a moment or two to pull off while I look for the PowerPoint that I'm going to pull up. Let's do this. Share screen. I want my PowerPoint. Hold on. Oh, I see. I can scroll down. Admin hearing. Oh, hold on just a moment. Slideshow from beginning. And just a moment. I've got a double screen, so sometimes this really confuses matters. Let me close some screens so that the PowerPoint is a little more visible. And one more try here. The screen, share. There it is. Perfect. Okay. Let's bring this to the beginning. Okay. Thank you for your patience there. So just stepping back a moment, San Francisco has a tree ordinance that establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. And our ordinance is referred to as Article 16 of the Public Works Code. Within this Public Works Code, it really outlines all of the civic codes and guidelines that protect street trees. And Section 808 of this code talks about protection of trees and landscape material, and specifically injury to or destruction of trees is being prohibited. And so the code states that it shall be unlawful for any person to intentionally, maliciously, or through gross negligence injure or destroy a street tree, any tree on city property, a significant tree, or a landmark tree. In addition to the penalties set forth in these sections, the director may require any person who removes or destroys a tree in violation of the provisions to pay for each tree removed or destroyed a sum of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value, whichever is greater. In this case, the landscape appraisal was not greater than $10,000, so the fine was $10,000 per tree. The director may require any person who injures a tree in violation of the provisions to pay a sum of money equal to the diminishment of the tree's value as set forth in the current edition of the Guide for Plant Appraisal, which is published by the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers. This is an important section to note as well. Where an abutting property owner removed a street tree or trees without obtaining a permit, the department shall require that the property owner plant a replacement street tree or trees with total diameter 6 inches above ground that is equal to or greater than the total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed or damaged without a permit. And so in this case, what often happens is that the required replacement can be just as large a penalty as the actual monetary fine. So in Article 16-806, we outline that there's a process for permitted planting and removal of street trees and what that process is required to look like. And it states that under Removal 3A, an abutting property owner who desires a permit to remove a street tree shall apply to the department on the designated form. The department may grant or deny the permit in accordance with the following procedures and requirements. If the department grants a tree removal permit, it shall require that a street tree or trees of equivalent replacement value to the one removed be planted in the place of the removed tree or impose an in lieu fee unless it makes written findings detailing the basis for waiving or modifying this requirement. We'll skip over this, but in general, protection of trees is always required during construction-related activities. This was not specifically related today to construction, but there's a number of requirements for protecting existing trees from destruction, from damage during construction. Also, our code does define injure or injury, and it can mean any or all of these descriptions. It doesn't have to meet all of them. Sometimes we issue fines and the tree may still have a trunk and look like it exists, but when we look at how much damage was done to the tree, we refer to it as destruction of the tree and or removal. So injure or injury shall mean any act which harms or damages a tree, including but not limited to, and then it lists a number of ways that trees can be damaged. And it does state that any tree subject to the provisions of this article, if intentionally or negligently allowing any liquid or gaseous solid substance that's harmful to a tree to come in contact with a tree, setting fire, intentionally or negligently permitting any fire to burn. But the last item I wanted to highlight in red is pruning, which in and of itself will kill or cause a tree to decline, or severing of all or part of a tree. So the tree doesn't have to decline or die for there to be injury. Even just severing of all or part of a tree may be so impactful as to require the finding that there's an injury that has occurred. We get into the administrative penalties in Article 16 of the Public Works Code. Again, we've actually stated this already, so this is a little bit of a repeat, but the director may require any person who removes or destroys a tree in violation of the provisions of this article to pay for each tree removed or destroyed a sum of $10,000 or the tree's replacement value. And then section 3 below, this is referred to, in this case, we're not really looking at this as an issue with today's case, but when one or more additional violations of the provisions of this Article 16 occur within 1 year of the first violation, the director may assess the responsible party $20,000 for each removed or destroyed tree and double the diminishment of the injured tree's value. In general, a bit of a summary. Trees are more than just beautiful additions to urban life. They're an essential component of the city's ecosystem and provide enormous environmental and social benefits. A permit is required to remove any street tree, significant tree, or landmark tree. It's illegal to injure a tree. Injuries can include excessive pruning and malicious acts like nailing objects to trees, and negligent acts like vehicular accidents. An illegal removal of a street tree requires replacement with equivalent inches in total diameter of the street tree or trees that were removed. It is the property owner's responsibility to know the law, and not knowing about the ordinance is not, grounds for excusing the responsibility. Regarding tree pruning, in general, the industry standards recommend that no more than 25% of the tree's canopy be removed each year. Do not remove more than 25% of the foliage on a branch or a limb each year. This will stress the tree and make it produce weakly attached branches the following year. It may or can kill or lead the tree to decline, but it may not cause the tree to die outright. Specifically, when you're pruning, do not cut back to a branch that is less than 1/3 or 1/2 the size of the main branch. So this would result in creating stub cuts. And so it's very important to selectively remove branches throughout the tree, not just the lowest branches, but removing the lowest branches when it is unnecessary is sometimes called limbing up. This can cause a tall, spindly tree to form, and it can also reduce the trunk flare and girth of the tree. Lower branches help keep the vigor in the lower portion of the tree, and this is especially important in conifers. So looking at this image, this is referred to as topping, which is not what we want to see happen to street trees. There can sometimes be confusion around very specific forms of pollarding, which is not topping, but in front of City Hall and in the bandshell area of Golden Gate Park, there are trees that have been pollarded, which is when a tree is very, very young, you top it once, and then after that point, you only prune off the resulting sprouts each year. But what you don't want to do is create large stub cuts like these. Regarding Street Tree SF, so in November 2016, the voters voted if the city should take over the maintenance responsibility for all of the city's street trees and the sidewalks in the public right-of-way. The voters voted yes, and July 1st, 2017, the city took over the maintenance responsibility for all of the approximately 125,000 street trees. What this means is that Public Works is now responsible for pruning trees when they're getting close to buildings and or removing and replacing them as well. We have a $19 million set aside that allows us to do this maintenance. We're referring, that was Prop E in 2016, but because there's a propositions each year, we refer to it as Street Tree SF, and to date, we have achieved the maintenance of 75% of the total tree maintenance needs, and we're looking to close out our first round of maintenance for the entire city. We are a little bit behind due to impacts from COVID and the pandemic. Again, here's some information about Street Tree SF and what it looks like when the city prunes and maintains street trees. I also just wanted to highlight on our website at Public Works, we have additional educational information about ficus trees specifically, which is the species that we'll be referring to in today's case. So it's a very common street tree in San Francisco. They're known for a really impressive, large, evergreen, healthy-looking canopy year-round. That said, due to a lack of structural pruning when these trees were much younger, much of the older, more mature ficus trees have developed poor structure, which can lead them to fail. Now, what causes this is a lack of pruning at the tree nursery when they're very young, and then a lack of structural pruning. As a city, we now know that it's very, very important to prune young, small trees to improve structure, to prevent poor structure from establishing in large trees. And this is showing multiple competing stems of about the same size, and these are very prone to failing and splitting apart. So we do have information. If you were to Google just San Francisco ficus or San Francisco tree, you would come to our website to learn more information. So thank you for your patience. With that, we can finally get into our regular staff presentation about the case we're referring to today, which is order, just to repeat it, is order 211407 to consider an appeal for the illegal removal of 2 street trees adjacent to 259 7th Street. As we've seen in our administrative code, the fine is $10,000 per tree. Again, it's for the illegal removal, but also remember we said several times in the code, it also talks about destruction of street tree or trees. So the tree may not be gone completely, but it may be destroyed or damaged to the point where we refer to it effectively as a removal. This is the timeline that our urban forestry inspector, Brian Ong, pulled together for us. So we have a little bit of a site history at this location. So going back to November 5th, 2023, urban forestry staff received an email from neighbors in the block concerned that there may be either an illegal removal or excessive pruning occurring at the subject property at 259 7th Street. In January, so a couple months later in 2024, about a year ago, Brian Ong, our staff, was able to call and talk to either the property owner or property manager to explain that the illegal tree removal process and that a fine would be issued for one tree, and really to not perform any additional work. That person on the phone verified that they would not prune or touch the trees moving forward. In October of 2024, we received another round of complaints from folks who live on the block. And on October 30th, our inspector, Brian Ong, called up to speak with the property owner or representative again to let them know that a fine for illegal removal of 2 trees will be issued. Even though one of those trees still exists, we believe that the tree has been damaged to the point that it's almost referred to as an illegal removal. And then we issued the fine on October 31st of 2024, again at $10,000 per tree. The resulting fine is $20,000, but also very steep replacement requirements. I have a number of photos to share, and what I will say is that these trees have been very severely pruned in years past, and it could be that there's a different business there now than there was. But if we look at Google Street View, and I do want to be, you know, in defense of the property owner or manager, I can see the trees were essentially excessively pruned or lollipopped over the years. That said, to be consistent with how we handle similar cases, we still do issue fines as required of our code, but I do want to share that, and I'll have more information about that as well. So this is the tree. In this image, there's a tree on the right that's just a low bush that was previously a planting site. This was the before photo, April 2022, tree 4, and tree 5. Well, looks like it's the same location, the tree site before photo. This was the after photo. The tree had been removed and replaced without a permit. And then this is tree 5 back in April of 2024. And the follow-up photo in October of 2024. So this site is tree 4, and this tree was removed without a permit. So that's tree 4. And then tree site 5 was so excessively pruned that we really refer to this as destruction. It's not pruning. You know, pruning is a very technical, professional level skill, and there's nothing that this is associated with in our industry as professional pruning. So we do consider this destruction of the tree, and it's tantamount to an illegal removal. I do want to show some additional site photos, and then we can try to pull up the photos that the property owner has as well. We do note that the property owner did plant an additional replacement tree at the site that used to have like a ficus bush there. Unfortunately, when one tree was removed and replaced without a permit, we also review species. So we have very specific species we like to see planted as street trees, and so we're not pleased with the species that was selected. They're not on our list of what we'd plant in this area of SOMA. And just some photos. I don't want to belabor this, but I do. We're not here to show photos of people, close-ups of their faces, but I just wanted to point out that this image provided to us from the public, what I see a completely blocked, obstructed bicycle lane or partial bicycle lane, and this is extremely problematic for the city because the city has jurisdiction over traffic in the public right-of-way, and to occupy the public right-of-way like this would have required a street use permit, so that we could have made sure that safe passage was provided for bicyclists. And so had there been an injury, a serious injury, or any injury the city would really be liable for failing to control and maintain what's occurring in the public right of way. This tree worker is not secure in the tree and could fall and potentially kill themselves or be severely injured. So to say at a minimum this is a Cal OSHA violation, it's not someone who's trained to work in trees and shouldn't be standing in the canopy like that. So again, very dangerous, but just showing a complete block of the bicycle lane. And again, these photos were provided by the neighbors. Now, all that said, we want to be reasonable and fair at the staff level, and I do want to show this photo. On Google Street View, you can see that for 10 or more years, if not 20 years, the trees at this site were excessively pruned into what we refer to as topiary or lollipops. And I will say that I'm under the assumption that the new business owner may have believed that, hey, this is what I can see on Google Street View over the years. We're just going to prune these trees and prune them the way that we can see on Google they've always been pruned. That said, so this previous photo is in February 2015. And before this, for another 10 years, you can see that they were clearly excessively pruned. In 2023, you can see that the trees are slowly establishing and regaining a more natural canopy. And what our recommendations here really would have been, the trees are finally getting to the point where after a few more growing cycles, with a little bit of pruning on the lower branches, we would finally establish the canopies up and over the signage, the business signage. And so, with an eye towards how trees grow biologically, we could prune these trees and train them to be up and above the signage. But unfortunately, one was removed without a permit. The other was excessively pruned to the point where we refer to it as essentially an illegal removal, because it should be removed at this point. But I do want to point that out. We've issued administrative fines, many over the years, and a common issue is this confusion about what the rules are and what people can see on Google Street View. And when the property owner is speaking, I will see if there's any additional photos. We do have in our files for sure anything that was submitted by them. We do have. We can also pull that up if the property owner wishes us to pull that up. But I believe what they would pull up are just showing that they've planted 2 trees and then the damaged tree on the far left here. But with that, all that said, street trees are under the jurisdiction of Public Works. Brian did reach out to the property owner or the property manager on site and explained the situation that we're going to have to issue a fine early last year. But then additional work occurred. So there is that troubling issue. The other thing that I'm aware of is that from feedback from the public, I believe people involved at the site were notified by concerned residents that they thought that the work occurring there shouldn't be occurring the way it was. And I will say that should have raised red flags for those individuals on site who should have run that up the chain of command to perhaps call the city and find out, what are the rules for working with street trees. That said, when you hire a professional, the professional performing work in the city will know the code in all the different cities where they perform work, and they would be able to help guide the property owner to properly reach out to Public Works to find out what's allowable. But when you don't hire a professional, you're eliminating your safety net of someone to properly guide you. And so that's unfortunately likely what occurred here. But with all that said, to respond, to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases, we did issue the fine. And to repeat, the replacement requirement is basically the trees that were removed without a permit. The code requires we measure or estimate the trunk diameter 6 inches above grade, and the property owner now has to plant replacement trees of that size. The way that people can do that is either putting back street trees of the same size, which is nearly impossible because you need to take up so much more room in the ground. Another way to do it is to plant additional street trees nearby, and or for any of the trunk diameter that you're responsible for replacing, you could essentially fee out and pay in lieu fees that would be the equivalent of that. So we're really talking about the monetary fine, but also the severity of having to replace what's likely going to be at least 10 inches per tree of trunk diameter for 20 inches worth of replacement trunk. So with that, I just wanted to stop presenting for the staff, and I appreciate everyone's patience and just listening to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes Public Works presentation. Is there a representative of the owner or the owner wishing to speak?
Hello, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Anil Patel and I'm the property owner for 259 7th Street. And I have been owner since 2018. And ever since we purchased this property, those trees were never trimmed before, even though we requested so many times on 311. Those trees were never trimmed. So what happened was those branches were so low, people was getting hurt. And also all those branches was touching our building. So our insurance company told us that we have to trim those trees 6 feet away from the building in order for us to get the insurance. Otherwise, they are not going to give us the insurance. And it is such a difficult time right now to get the property insurance right now. So after I reaching out to Department of Public Works few times, it wasn't trimmed. So I hired an landscaper to trim those trees. I wasn't there. So that gardener removed one tree and other tree was trimmed. So as soon as we found out, we have them stop. And I planted 2 trees there. I know it's probably not within a code. So I'm willing to maybe replace those trees with the corrected trees there. And not only this, those 4 or 5 trees that we have in front of our building, it's not uniform with our other trees on our street. Because those trees that we have in front of our building, those are so big compared to other trees on our street, these are very small. And all those trees are touching our properties, and we have a difficult time getting insurance. So I would like to ask Department of Public Works to remove all those trees and replace with smaller trees. So I will not have any problem with our insurance company also. And I do apologize for the removing those trees through our gardener.
Okay. And is that your that's your end of your testimony?
Yeah, and so I would like to ask to remove those penalties of $20,000, please.
Okay.
Because if Department of Public Works have trimmed those trees, I would not have to touch those trees.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make comments?
There are no other members of the public present.
Okay, so if there are no more comments on this item, let me just ask a couple questions, if I could. So Mr. Buck. I just, so for clarification, and you touched on this at the end of your testimony, the replacement trees. There were three trees in the photos that you showed. The one all the way on the right looked like a bush, and that was replaced by a small tree. The middle one was taken out completely and replaced by a small tree, and the one on the left was basically lopped off, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, and then so the code requires replacement of trees, as you said, with similar width, so the fines that would be issued or that have been assessed, which are $20,000, would then, in addition, there would have to be a payment to plant additional trees or to make up for the loss of a mature tree, essentially.
Correct. So there are two things in play here. One is the monetary fine, as kind of an item to be considered, by the hearing officer and the director under their review, required of the code. But also, yes, that trunk diameter replacement. It could be that some of that trunk diameter replacement is quite expensive. So I do know that that's a consideration point, is that, there's this monetary fine, but the replacement requirement can be equally steep. Based on the testimony today, I think one consideration is to look at if Public Works were to, because the other ficus trees, because they've been poorly pruned long before this property owner, and creates this resulting structure where the insurance is saying, look, you got to prune these trees back. I think a discussion point for, leadership above us would be to look at that, evaluate if removing the other trees and then having the property owner plant replacement trees in those locations with greater trunk diameters. That might be one way to achieve some of the planting mitigations if those other existing trees are in poor condition. But just to go back to the short answer is yes, there's two factors in play. There's the administrative penalty, financial, but there's also this replacement requirement. And it's relatively new. This was amended and added to our code in February of 2022. So it's a pretty newish element, is this replacement value, physical size. Yep.
And do your records show that the department has pruned any of those trees in that area, the two that are in question here, plus the additional one that the owner is talking about, since 2017, when the city took over the trees?
I can check right now. We do have a street tree map that's on our website that shows which key maps or grids have been pruned at least once. I think the challenge with this particular row of species is because they've been kind of lollipopped in a way, they've been hedged, it creates a structure that's really hard to keep clear for more than, say, 1 or 2 years at a time. So we can confirm that and let you know following the hearing with like the date when that key map work was done. And likely it wouldn't be adequate in and of itself. And that would be one reason to, we would only remove a tree if it's no longer healthy and sustainable. I think the other ficus on the same frontage are in that realm of not really being sustainable if we can't maintain a reasonable amount of clearance between the canopy and the tree. So yeah, we'll confirm the pruning cycle, but also just that although, when you need clearance from a building, the idea is to judiciously get clearance away from the building. It doesn't mean reduce the height of the tree. So, but I do see the, the property owner's point about the challenge of maintaining ongoing clearance from the building with the existing trees there.
Okay. Okay, well, then if there are no more comments for the item, excuse me, I'll close this item and we'll make my recommendations to the director. It doesn't appear that there are other people who are on the call, so if there are no more public comments, I will close this hearing. I will send my comments to my recommendations to the director, and she'll make the final determination. So this hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you.